Hello all, Game Methuselah. I wanted to apologize ahead of time and tell you this is not a Monster Mambo. I set up my Monster Mambo to film today because I didn't like the way it was done the first time, a couple days ago, and we were going to get into it and set up a new dungeon setup, and it looked good, and it was filming good, and then I went away for a little while to do some other projects. When I got back, I found my cat had rearranged the tiles onto the floor. So I stormed off in a huff and pouted, and after my pouting was done, I decided, well, I might as well go do something. And there's something I've been wanting to talk about, and I thought, what the heck, this was a good time to talk about it. And that is this, Metamorphosis Alpha. 1976 first print, TSR Publications. In fact, it's kind of got a really fun thing that I think Matt would love. This is their little list of other products available at TSR, and you can see, Dungeons and Dragons and the original box set, and Greyhawk and Blackmore and Eldritch Wizardry and Gods, Demigods, and Heroes. This is what was available at the time. Now you'll even see that I believe Tekkamil is somewhere in there, and they list a couple other things. Now, Metamorphosis Alpha was a really interesting little game when it came out. It's really more setting and eventual location than it really is rules. What they did is they used the simplified Dungeons & Dragons Zero rules, if that's possible to make them any simpler. But it's interesting because it doesn't run exactly like role-playing games. Basically, the statistics that exist in this would be your strength and your dexterity and your endurance, which you're very familiar with. Then you had radiation resistance, mental resistance, and I believe the other was leadership potential. And those are your statistics. You would roll your 3d6 for each one of them and work them that way. If you were human, you got all 6 statistics. If you decided you wanted to run a mutant character, one that had been irradiated when the poor warden ship stumbled into this unusual radiation belt, and most of the people died, the ship was suddenly on an uncontrolled course, and everything devolved into a medieval-style world. The color was really interesting, but there was less involved. You just rolled to see if you hit, you did damage. Your endurance was how many dice of damage you had. So very different. A first level character didn't, have the short number and then advance. Your characters in this game really didn't go anywhere. I mean, what you generated is what you had for the entire game. And a lot of things like your radiation resistance were very powerful and important, because if you stumbled into a belt of radiation on the ship, you might just die. And time to generate a new character. And that was very common both in D&D Zero and, of course, in Metamorphosis Alpha. But it had an interesting story. I looked at it, I thought, wow, the rules are kind of simplified. And the no advancement, I think, really killed it for a lot of people, because in the 76 period of time, everybody was excited with role-playing games. And it was the kick in the door, kill the monsters, get the treasure, go up in experience and become higher level till eventually one time you're a lord or a great wizard or something. And that was what was really appealing, and still is, I know, really appealing in role-playing. And this does not have any of that. Now, in looking it up to find out, to tell you that if you want to go on eBay, you could find a copy of this rules. And you can. This is a first printing, 76. There's a 1978 third printing currently on eBay for about $100. I'm not sure what this one would go for. I didn't see any first printings up there, so I'm going to guess, substantially more. But the great thing about it is, I guess in 2014, that I did not know about, Goodman Games, I think they do a lot of other different things. They kickstarted Metamorphosis Alpha with a leather book, and then an updated book with all the articles that had been put out about the game in the Dragon magazine. And I guess that was pretty extensive. And I'm not sure what it added, but these things are very affordable. And so if you're really interested in reading about it and seeing about it, you don't have to spend the large amount to have the original rules. You can go ahead and get these for $10. Some of the different stuff, maybe a little more if you want a leather-bound edition. And they seem to go out at about cost. But that's all up to you. I'm doing this video because I really think I need to talk more about the old parts of gaming that a lot of people don't know. Now, I don't get anywhere near the viewership when I do these, as if I talk about something that's more of a D&D subject, but this is something that I know that really a lot of people don't get out there, and I don't want this to get lost in the future, and I want people to be able to know what's out there. In rereading the rules, it's quite interesting. It's actually kind of a really interesting little game. You're not role-playing. You're basically building a science fiction game. And if you want to role-play, you surely can. You could use Fantasy Trip. You could use Dungeons & Dragons. And that leads me to my story of running Metamorphosis Alpha. I have run this, maybe one of what I thought was the best campaigns I ever made, and I ran it 3 times for 3 different groups, and everybody hated it. And what it was a bait and switch. I would run a Dungeons & Dragons adventure. Everybody would generate their Dungeons & Dragons characters. They were all excited to play. We ran it as a role-playing. Now, as I describe creatures, I describe them as they were in Dungeons & Dragons. Well, kobolds. Kobolds were little dog-faced men, and, you know, they were mutated, but I didn't tell them that. We didn't speak a mutation. We looked at everything as if it was a fantasy game. I had a little map of what would have been one deck of this great colony ship, Warden, that was attempting to move from Earth to some new planet to be developed. And the disaster that befell the crew was really sad. So you had sort of either a passengers type thing, or a silent running, or whatever, where you have a crippled ship that is now devolved into something, and what's going to happen to the various characters as they go to try to figure it out. And I thought it would be really brilliant of me. It was such a great idea, which of course, as you know, is the famous last words, to do this kind of game. And I did. And boy, they loved the role playing. They never caught on to it for 4 or 5 or 6 adventures. And then at some point they go, wait a minute, this seems odd. I mean, this almost seems like technology. I maybe didn't, maybe I didn't have the savvy to describe it in a way to keep it in the D&D frame. Instead of, I maybe didn't describe the golems, which were robots, or the creatures, which were just animals that had been mutated, or the elves and the dwarves and the halflings that were all just mutated humans. So what I had done is milked down and reduced actually the quality of the game, and then bait and switched with the players. So once they finally realized they were in a space game, they were kind of mad. They didn't want this, and I didn't understand it. It seemed like a great idea to me. But everybody said, look, we want the full immersion into the role-playing, into the fantasy gaming. We didn't want to play science fiction, or, we would have asked for science fiction gaming. Not that there really was that much science fiction gaming in '76. And I was confused, but I was 19, so I said, oh, sorry, and I went along. But I did this 20 years later with the Machiavellian group. I thought, okay, these guys are experienced characters. They've been through the mill. They're going to really appreciate this. When they get the reveal that they're actually on a spaceship and somehow their characters have to learn to control it, to save the day, they're going to be really excited. No. They all felt exactly like the people had felt 20 years before. Hey, we didn't come here to play science fiction, or we would have run Traveler or something else. We wanted to play role-playing. That's an interesting thing to remember. When you are game mastering a campaign, when you are role-playing a game, you have to understand what it is the players want. I'm always in conflict right now with people in what I feel the games are not deadly enough, too easy, too friendly, you just do everything. And even though it seems impossible odds, miraculously, you beat everything. And I think that changes over time. It surely has changed for me. And I wonder, as I say to people, please run the games you want to run. We play a lot of Adventure League, where I go down and play with the other players. And I haven't lost a character in 5th edition. I did lose one in 3.5. I did lose 2 in 4th edition. But since then, it seems in 5th they have not been able to kill off one of my characters, or even kill off a character in any of my parties. I hear it happens, so I'm looking forward to seeing it in the future. But I think you have a change. People are looking at it more as a social event. They're familiar with the game and they're enjoying it, but they want to still have that feeling of they're the hero. It isn't always there's a heroic event and someone might be the hero, but no, I want to be the hero. And it can be fair, and of course, if that's what your group wants as a good DM, I think you should try to provide as best you can that. But I think for me, for a lot of people I know, and maybe just because we're old curmudgeon gamers, it's really not a game unless there is a constant risk of death. Now, Metamorphosis Alpha, there was a constant risk of death. Once you took your hits, you were dead. If you ran into a radiation belt and you missed your save, you were dead. If you were poisoned by a creature, well, you were dead. They say it's a game run by one game master and 4 to 24 player characters. Now, that pretty much tells you that A, they're optimistic that you're going to get a lot of people in the ship to play, and B, you're going to have a lot of fatalities. And we did. I would consider running this game again. I really like the concept. It was like you saw in the movie Passengers, where, the colony ship gets screwed up and all these people, and now are in hypersleep, something that maybe wasn't thought about as much in the 70s, but that may be how you run it. Now, how do people who are not part of the command crew try to figure out a way to get through the evil mutated creatures, where you could use something zombie apocalypse or whatnot, or just whatever? They know they're on a ship, maybe, and it is a science fiction game, and then they have to basically play, gather, and learn how to use the items, control them, and alike to advance. And I think that would be satisfactory and satisfying to people. And, of course, you don't need to use the Metamorphosis Alpha rules. When it's funny, even though I do reread them, I find they are very functional. You could use basic D&D, it allows for much more expansion of characters. You could use Fantasy Trip, you could use whatever you like. I think there's lots of ways to play it. It was fun, and I think for those of you who want to see a piece of real role-playing history, of gaming history in the 70s, it's a real good book to look at. And again, like I said, you don't have to dole out the $100+ to get an original copy. You can buy the reprint from Goodman Games on eBay. I think they're out of print. I went on their site trying to see if it was just buyable, and everything says that it's out of stock. Now, I don't know whether they're going to do a reprint, in which case, hopefully you can buy them. But in the meantime, like I said, go on to eBay, pick up a copy, and take a look at how gaming was played. It really has the feel and flavor of more than likely what is one of the most practical and first science fiction games ever played. And it was fun. It was even fun for me to try to run the D&D situation, even though I don't think in the end it was fun for everybody else. But we won't make that mistake again. So I'm going to get together and get this Monster Mambo out for you. I promise. Sooner or later, I got to go out now and pick up my tiles and put them all back together. Thank God they're the Dwarven Iron Forge stuff that doesn't break, and not my old ceramics, which would have been shards. So we'll get that done, and you'll see that soon. So in the meantime, fight me devils, fight, for I hate peace. Take a look at Metamorphosis Alpha. Don't bait and switch your players. They won't be happy. And we'll talk again soon. Game on.